Natives of the primeval forests of Europe, Homo neanderthalensis, are sometimes called our ancient brothers and sisters. We are accustomed to romanticizing them now, to sculpting them into misunderstood cousins. Yet the bones tell another story. The proportions, the brain size, the huge brow ridges over deep-set eyes. They were not simply different. They were formidable, but also intelligent. Imagine encountering one not in a museum reconstruction but in a twilight forest 40,000 years ago. But in a world already savage, they were perhaps the most savage thing in it. In this sense, savage is not an insult, but a term to describe their fierce will to survive in an unforgiving landscape. Western culture leans heavily on the idea of linear progress: caveman, spear, fire, then refinement, art, civilization, science. The Neanderthal became a symbol of everything crude and animalistic that we believed we had transcended. Stooped posture, heavy brow, club in hand. That caricature was convenient. It reassured us that history moves upward, that we are the finished version. But paleoanthropology has never been so simple. More than 150 years ago, evolutionist William King wrote that the distinctive faculties of man are visibly expressed in his elevated cranial dome, a feature which essentially characterizes the human species. But considering that the Neanderthal skull is eminently simian, both in its general and particular characters, I feel myself constrained to believe that the thoughts and desires which once dwelt within it never soared beyond those of the brute. For King, the idea of this thing being considered human was just plain crazy. In 1863 and 1864, King argued that this cranium looked more like a chimpanzee than a human, and therefore it should be placed in a new species, Homo neanderthalensis. This is significant because this was the first time that a species of hominin other than Homo sapiens was named based on fossils. Let that sink in for a second. This is the first time a scientist ever looked at a fossil and thought to himself, this looks vaguely human, but also very different. Therefore it should be another species. A huge moment in the history of the study of human evolution. And of course it's worth mentioning that the name still sticks today. Neanderthals were not evolutionary side quests. They were a highly successful human lineage that thrived in Eurasia for over 400,000 years. They survived glacial maxima, hunted megafauna, mastered fire, crafted sophisticated stone tools, buried their dead, and interbred with our ancestors. They were not a failed draft. They were a parallel chapter. The brain size question complicates the upgrade narrative immediately. Average Neanderthal cranial capacity often falls between 1450 and 1600 cubic centimeters. Early Upper Paleolithic Homo sapiens, the Cro-Magnons, sometimes exceeded 1600 cubic centimeters. Modern humans today average closer to 1400 cubic centimeters, with regional variation. On raw volume alone, Neanderthals frequently surpass us. But brain size is not the same as intelligence, nor is it destiny. Neanderthal brains were shaped differently. They had elongated cranial vaults, expanded occipital regions, and possibly larger visual processing areas. Their bodies were stockier and more muscular, requiring greater neural resources for motor control. Some researchers suggest that a greater proportion of Neanderthal brain tissue may have been allocated to vision and somatic control rather than social cognition or long-range planning. That is not inferiority. It is specialization. Consider the Ice Age landscape of Europe. Long winters, low light, massive prey animals, dense forests, close-range ambush hunting, a body built for strength and cold adaptation, a brain tuned to visual acuity and spatial awareness. In that context, Neanderthals were not brutes. They were optimized. Modern humans evolved in a different ecological and social matrix. Our skulls are more globular. Our parietal regions are expanded. Some argue that this shape reflects greater integration of neural networks, especially those tied to symbolic thought, language, and social complexity. Whether that difference was decisive remains debated, but it suggests divergence, not hierarchy. The upgrade narrative also collapses under genetics. Every population today carries between 1 to 3% Neanderthal DNA. That DNA is not random residue. It affects immune responses, skin pigmentation, fat metabolism, even aspects of circadian rhythm. In other words, Neanderthals are not extinct in a clean sense. They are biologically integrated into us. If we insist on calling them brutes, we are insulting part of ourselves. The real tension behind the idea is existential. If Neanderthals were as intelligent, as emotionally complex, and perhaps even as cognitively capable as we are, then their extinction becomes uncomfortable. It forces us to ask why one lineage vanished while another spread. The archaeological record suggests a complicated answer. Neanderthals made sophisticated Mousterian tools using Levallois techniques that required advanced planning and geometric understanding. They used adhesives like birch tar, which implies knowledge of controlled heating in low-oxygen environments. They cared for injured individuals who survived severe trauma. Shanidar I lived for years with a withered arm and possible blindness. That is social support, for example. That is empathy. Evidence of symbolic behavior has grown steadily: pigment use, engraved objects, personal ornaments in Iberia that predate confirmed Homo sapiens' arrival in the region, intentional burial at multiple sites. Whether their symbolic world matched upper Paleolithic explosion levels is debated, but the caricature of a purely instinctual creature is no longer defensible. At the same time, it is also true that something changed around 50,000 years ago. Modern human populations expanded rapidly across Eurasia. Symbolic artifacts proliferated: cave art, bone tools, musical instruments, long-distance trade networks. Population density increased. Cultural transmission accelerated. Innovation appears to have compounded. That compounding effect may be the key difference. It may not have been individual IQ. It may have been social network scale. Larger, more interconnected populations can store more information externally. Culture becomes cumulative. Tools improve incrementally rather than cyclically. Ideas survive the death of their inventors. Neanderthals appear to have lived in smaller, more fragmented groups. Genetic data suggests low effective population size. Isolation makes cultural drift more likely. Innovations can vanish if groups shrink or migrate. A lineage can be cognitively capable yet demographically vulnerable. That is not brute failure. It is structural disadvantage. The brain size decline from early Homo sapiens to modern humans adds another layer. Why would cranial capacity decrease over the last 30,000 years if evolution is a straight march upward? One explanation is metabolic efficiency. Large brains are expensive. As cultural scaffolding expanded, writing, external memory systems, distributed labor, individual brain volume may have been less critical than network intelligence. The human advantage might lie in coordination, not sheer cortical mass. In that light, the upgrade is not bigger brains. It is scalable cooperation. There is also a psychological bias at play. Humans prefer linear stories. We imagine evolution as a ladder rather than a branching tree. But evolution produces diversity, not direction. Neanderthals were not aiming to become us. We are not the goal of evolution. We are one surviving twig. The discomfort comes from confronting contingency. If Neanderthals had survived and we had vanished, they might be debating whether Homo sapiens were the brutes. Our lighter skeletons, our narrower chests, our smaller average cranial capacity, our dependence on extended trade networks. They might interpret our extinction as proof of inferiority. History is written by survivors. Early European Homo sapiens were fully modern humans anatomically, though often more robust than many contemporary populations. Their large cranial capacities remind us that early Homo sapiens were not small-brained prototypes. They were diverse, and in some cases, even larger-brained than Neanderthals. So what does brain size actually tell us? Not as much as simple charts imply. Modern human brain size varies widely. There is significant overlap between Neanderthal and Homo sapiens ranges. Intelligence does not scale linearly with volume. Neural organization, synaptic density, connectivity patterns, developmental timing, and cultural environment all matter more. Moreover, equating brain size with worth echoes dangerous 19th century thinking that was used to rank human populations. We should be cautious about resurrecting simplistic size hierarchies, even in prehistoric debates. The deeper question is whether we need Neanderthals to be brutes psychologically. There may be some truth there. The idea that we are not the inevitable pinnacle can feel destabilizing. If Neanderthals were equally intelligent and simply lost through demographic chance or climate fluctuation, then modern human dominance becomes fragile. It suggests that extinction is not a moral verdict, but a statistical event. That has implications for our own future. Neanderthals survived hundreds of thousands of years of climatic oscillation before disappearing during a period of intense environmental instability and interspecies interaction. Their extinction reminds us that adaptability has limits. Specialization can become vulnerability when conditions shift too rapidly. Modern humans have achieved unprecedented global reach, but we are also deeply dependent on complex systems. Our success rests on agriculture, energy networks, digital infrastructure, and international supply chains. If those systems fracture, raw cognitive potential will not guarantee survival. Cooperation and resilience will. In that sense, the Neanderthal story is not about upgrade versus brute. It is about different evolutionary strategies colliding under stress. Another layer to this debate involves hybridization. Genetic evidence shows multiple episodes of interbreeding between Neanderthals and modern humans. Some hybrid offspring were fertile and integrated into Homo sapiens populations. However, certain Neanderthal genetic variants were later purged from the modern human gene pool, particularly those affecting the X chromosome and testes. This suggests some degree of reduced hybrid male fertility. That pattern hints at biological boundaries between lineages. They were close enough to interbreed, distant enough to experience some incompatibilities. It complicates the narrative of clean replacement. It suggests absorption and assimilation alongside competition. Were Neanderthals violent? Almost certainly capable of it. Trauma patterns on some skeletons resemble close-range hunting injuries, but interpersonal violence cannot be ruled out. However, projecting savagery onto them ignores the fact that early modern humans likely engaged in violence as well. Upper Paleolithic sites show evidence of conflict and cannibalism in some cases. Violence is not a Neanderthal monopoly. It is a human capacity. The cultural portrayal of Neanderthals as brutish often reveals more about modern insecurities than about Ice Age reality. For decades, textbooks depicted them as dim, hunched figures dragging clubs. That image lingered even after anatomical reconstructions corrected posture and gait. The stereotype served as a foil, a way to dramatize our own refinement. But the fossil record resists that simplification. Neanderthals had complex lives. They experienced grief, injury, adaptation, and innovation. They faced harsh climates without agriculture or modern medicine. They survived in Europe during periods when ice sheets expanded across the continent. That alone requires respect. The upgrade framing also misunderstands evolution's mechanics. Natural selection does not strive for moral progress. It favors traits that enhance reproductive success in specific environments. A lineage can be cognitively sophisticated and still decline if population numbers drop below sustainable thresholds. Extinction is not proof of stupidity. There is also the matter of developmental differences. Studies of Neanderthal growth patterns suggest they matured slightly faster than modern humans, though the gap may not have been dramatic. Extended childhood in Homo sapiens may have allowed prolonged learning and social bonding. That developmental timing could have amplified cumulative culture. Again, the advantage lies not in raw neural mass, but in life history strategy. When we strip away caricature, what remains is something more humbling. Modern humans did not triumph because we were morally superior or dramatically smarter on an individual level. We may have succeeded because we built broader alliances, maintained larger mating networks, and adapted socially as much as biologically. Our species excels at forming symbolic coalitions, tribes, nations, religions, scientific communities. We outsource memory to books and now to servers. We create virtual cognition. Neanderthals may have operated in tighter circles. That does not make them brutes. It makes them different. The idea that we need them to be brutes might stem from a desire for clean narratives, heroes and villains, primitive and advanced, before and after. But human evolution is not a fairy tale. It is a braided river, with channels that merge and split. It is also worth reflecting on the fact that our own brain size has slightly decreased over the Holocene. Some anthropologists propose that as societies grew more complex, individual selection pressures shifted. Intelligence became distributed. Social navigation may have mattered more than spatial memory for hunting megafauna. If anything, our trajectory suggests optimization rather than expansion. We are not larger-brained than our Upper Paleolithic ancestors. We are differently wired in a world saturated with culture. In this light, the claim of brutishness becomes less accusatory and more introspective. Perhaps we do resist acknowledging Neanderthal sophistication because it undermines a comforting myth. If they were fully human in cognition and emotion, then our dominance is not proof of destiny. It is a contingent outcome. But contingency does not diminish us. It contextualizes us. We are the product of countless interactions, with Neanderthals, Denisovans, unknown archaic lineages. Our genome is a mosaic, our culture is cumulative, our identity is layered. Recognizing Neanderthals as complex beings does not dethrone us, it enriches the story. The real upgrade, if there is one, may be our capacity for reflection. We can examine fossils, extract DNA, debate cognitive architecture, and question our own myths. That meta-awareness is itself a remarkable trait. Yet even that does not make us invulnerable. The Neanderthal lesson is not about brute versus upgrade. It is about the fragility of lineages, about how climate, demography, and interaction can reshape the tree of life, about how intelligence alone does not guarantee permanence. We carry their genes, we study their bones, we reconstruct their faces, we argue about their minds. In doing so, we reveal our own. If anything, the more we learn about Neanderthals, the less comfortable the hierarchy becomes. They were not apes in human form. They were humans in a different form, and perhaps the most mature response is not to insist on superiority but to accept complexity. We did not replace a species of brutes. We emerged from a world of multiple human kinds. Some merged with us, some vanished. We remain not as an upgrade in a mechanical sense, but as the current expression of a deep and branching heritage. That is not unbearable. It is profound. It's also worth restating the interesting pronouncements made by William King on the Neanderthal fossil's intelligence in his claims that it could not be human, stating that the thoughts and desires which once dwelt within it never soared beyond those of a brute. A characterization of the stupid, brutish Neanderthal that we still have not completely shaken today. And with that tantalizing statement, we leave you to ponder the mysteries of our shared human history. Until next time, stay curious and stay questioning. Please subscribe, share and explore our channel's other videos. Thank you and take care.